Some libraries are more than just places to store books. Some of these hold ancient manuscripts, rare documents, and writings that have survived for over 1,000 years. There are places where some of the most important parts of human history are stored. And in this video, we will visit the most iconic libraries in the world. Before we begin, please like this video and subscribe. It means a lot to us content creators. Thank you. And now let's get started. Bodleian Library in Oxford. Its history began in the early 1700s as part of the University of Oxford, but it expanded further when Sir Thomas Bodley funded the restoration of the university's old library. Since then, it gradually became one of the most important collections of manuscripts and rare books in the world. One of the most important features of the Bodleian is its status as a legal deposit library. This means it has the right to receive a copy of almost every book published in the United Kingdom. Because of this, millions of printed materials have been accumulated here over many centuries. Inside the library, some very important medieval manuscripts, ancient religious texts, and rare documents from the Middle Ages are stored. These include old versions of works by Geoffrey Chaucer, as well as ancient copies of the Canterbury Tales. It also has a copy of the famous First Folio, the first collection of plays by William Shakespeare that was published in the 17th century. Many of Shakespeare's plays could have been lost forever if that collection had not been published. Another well-known part of it is the Duke Humphreys Library. When you see its interior, it's like you've gone back to the time of medieval Europe. Wooden shelves, high arches, and old designs that have hardly changed for hundreds of years. Because the documents stored here are very sensitive, the library has a strict conservation process. The light, humidity, and temperature are controlled to prevent the ancient paper and ink from being damaged. And even though this institution is very old, its modernization continues to this day. They also use digital archiving so researchers can study the documents without having to handle the original copies themselves. Biblioteca Nationale Marciana. Its foundations were laid when Greek scholar Cardinal Vissarion donated his vast collection of Greek and Latin manuscripts to Venice in the 15th century. At that time, many classical texts were at risk of being lost due to political instability and the fall of several centers of Byzantine learning. Because of that donation, Venice became one of the main guardians of Europe's classical knowledge. One of the most important contents of the library were the ancient manuscripts of Homer, Aristotle, and Sophocles. Some of these are among the earliest surviving copies found by historians. There are also historical records here about the early printing industry of Venice. During the Renaissance period, Venice was one of the largest centers of book printing in Europe. Thousands of books were printed here and distributed to different parts of the continent. One of the most important historical artifacts of the library is the Fra Mauro map, a very large world map from the 15th century. Even before the age of exploration in Europe began, this map was already trying to depict how people at that time saw the world. Aside from the manuscripts and maps, the library is also known for the building itself. It was designed by the Renaissance architect Jacopo Sansovino, and even today it is considered one of the most beautiful libraries. Here in Europe, with its detailed paintings and spacious halls, it's like a combination of a museum, a library, and a historical archive. And like other world-class libraries, the preservation methods here are also very strict. Ancient books and manuscripts are placed in special storage rooms to protect them from heat, moisture, and natural deterioration. Trinity College, Dublin Library. Trinity College was founded in the late 16th century, and at the same time the library's collection began to grow. For more than 400 years, it has been a center for research in history, religion, literature, and Celtic studies. But among everything stored here, nothing is more famous than the Book of Kells. It is a highly detailed gospel manuscript created during the early medieval period, possibly around the 9th century. It is believed to have been created by monks from the Celtic Christian tradition in Ireland or on the island of Iona in Scotland. This is no ordinary book. Each page is filled with hand-drawn illustrations, colorful decorations, and intricate patterns that were made by hand more than 1,000 years ago. Aside from the Book of Kells, the library has other important manuscripts such as the Book of Duro and the Book of Mulling. These texts offer a rare glimpse into religion, writing, and art during the early part of the Middle Ages. But Trinity Library doesn't just house medieval manuscripts. Because of its legal deposit status dating back to the 19th century, it also receives copies of many books published in Ireland and the United Kingdom. So as time goes by, its archive continues to grow even larger. One of the most iconic parts of the library is also what's called the Long Room. But because the collections are very sensitive, there are also strict rules for access. Handling of some manuscripts is limited, and there are special preservation systems to protect them against moisture, light, and paper deterioration. There are also historical archives here about the political and cultural history of Ireland. These include old legal texts, medieval records, and personal letters of well-known literary figures. In other words, Trinity College Library is not just a tourist destination. It is a huge time capsule of the history of Ireland and medieval Europe. Vatican Apostolic Library. It was officially established in the 15th century under Pope Sixtus IV, although there was already an earlier collection of papal documents before that. Today, it is estimated that hundreds of thousands of manuscripts and over 1 million printed books are stored here. One of the most important treasures of the library is the Codex Vaticanus. It is one of the oldest known Greek manuscripts of the Bible that still exists today. Because of this, it is extremely valuable to scholars who study the history of Christianity and the development of biblical texts. There is also an ancient illustrated manuscript of the works of Virgil, known as the Virgilius Vaticanus. What makes it special is that not only the text is important, but also the artwork inside it. It provides a rare example of how artists created illustrated manuscripts during the late Roman period. It also contains ancient maps, scientific writings, astronomical studies, and legal documents from different parts of the world. It also includes Islamic manuscripts, Hebrew texts, and documents from Eastern Christian traditions. The public can't just enter here either. Usually only researchers and scholars with special approval are allowed to use the archives. But in recent years, the Vatican has expanded its digitization projects. Many manuscripts have already been scanned and put online, so researchers from different parts of the world can access them without having to handle the original copies. The Morgan Library and Museum. At first, this was just a private collection of rare books, manuscripts, and historical documents that Morgan bought from different parts of Europe. But over time, the collection grew and grew until it became one of the most important repositories of rare texts in the United States. After Morgan's death, it was turned into a public institution in the 1920s, and since then, it has become an important center for historical and literary research. One of the library's most important treasures is the Morgan Beatus, a 10th century manuscript containing commentary about the Apocalypse written by Beatus of Libana. This manuscript is known for its vivid illustrations and as a rare example of medieval Spanish art. In the world of manuscript studies, it is very important because there are only a few surviving examples of this kind of illuminated texts. It also has 3 copies of the Gutenberg Bible, one of the earliest large books printed using Johannes Gutenberg's movable type printing press. One of these copies is printed on vellum or animal parchment, something that is extremely rare and very important for historians of printing technology. You can find original handwritten manuscripts and letters here. These are letters from famous writers such as Charles Dickens, Lord Byron, John Keats, Charlotte Bronte, and Mark Twain. Some of these documents have visible corrections, crossed out sentences, and handwritten edits. Because of this, researchers can see for themselves how some of the most famous literary works in history were created. One of the most frequently studied is the original manuscript of A Christmas Carol by Dickens, where you can still see his changes as he wrote the story. Today, the Morgan Library is not just a museum. It is also an active research institution where scholars from different countries come to study some of the most important manuscripts and artistic works in Western history. The Bibliothèque Nationale de France is located in Paris, and the origins of its collection go all the way back to the medieval monarchy of France in the 14th century. One of the most important parts of its collection is the millions of handwritten pages from medieval Europe up to the modern era. Included here are illuminated manuscripts, religious texts, scientific treatises, and literary drafts that are still used by researchers up to this day. There are also ancient Greek papyri here, as well as early Latin codices and medieval documents that were copied in monasteries even before the printing press was invented. This includes the Chansonnier du Roi and other medieval songbooks that musicologists used to understand how European music sounded hundreds of years ago. And of course, French literature is also a major part of the archive. There are manuscripts and personal papers here from Victor Hugo, Voltaire, Molière, and Marcel Proust. This includes early globes, maritime charts, and world maps from the era of European exploration. Because of this, the library is also important for the study of history, exploration, trade routes, and cartography. Overall, the BNF is more than just the National Library of France. It is a vast archive of the cultural and intellectual history of Europe. The British Library, although it was officially established in the 1970s as a separate institution, most of its collections are centuries older because these came from the Royal Archives, government collections, and the holdings of the British Museum. One of its most important treasures is the Lindisfarne Gospels, an early medieval manuscript created in the 8th century. It is known for its highly detailed artwork and the combination of Christian tradition and insular Celtic art style. Another one of the most important documents in the British Library is the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta is one of the most important legal documents in Western history because it became the foundation of several modern concepts about law, rights, and the limitation of government power. The library has several verified copies of this document, including the version from 1315. This includes illuminated Bibles, Anglo-Saxon texts, scientific writings, and literary works such as Beowulf. They also have original manuscripts by Geoffrey Chaucer and other medieval writers. This includes copies of the Gutenberg Bible and first editions of works by William Shakespeare. One of the most well-known parts of the building is the King's Library Tower. Up to now, the British Library continues to digitize and protect its collections to preserve these documents for future generations. New York Public Library. It was opened in the early 1900s and quickly became a symbol of education, research, and public access to knowledge. One of its most important possessions is also a copy of the Gutenberg Bible. Because this book is very sensitive, it is rarely put on public display and is kept in controlled conditions to protect it from light and deterioration. There are also original documents from key figures in early American history. These include documents from George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Alexander Hamilton. One of the most important parts of its collection is the medieval and Renaissance manuscripts. There are illuminated prayer books, theological writings, and early scientific texts from the 12th to the 16th century. Many of these materials were once owned by wealthy collectors such as J.P. Morgan before they were eventually donated to the library. There is also a large map division at the NYPL. Its archive also includes rare photographs, early photographic technology records, and documentary images from the 19th century. One of the most well-known parts of the building is the Rose main reading room. It has high ceilings, long wooden tables, and a spacious reading hall that is often described as one of the most beautiful library interiors in the world. Through digitization, restoration work, and conservation programs, the New York Public Library continues to protect millions of documents that are important not only to American history, but also to global cultural history. National Diet Library. It was established after World War II in 1948 as the official research library of the Japanese Parliament or National Diet. But as the country grew after the war, it gradually became a center for the preservation of Japan's history, culture, and documentation. One of the most important parts of its collection is its ancient Buddhist manuscripts and imperial records, dating from the 8th through the 12th centuries. Many of these are written on traditional Japanese paper made from mulberry fibers, while some of them are decorated with gold leaf and mineral pigments. Because these materials are extremely sensitive, they are placed in special storage facilities with controlled humidity and temperature to prevent deterioration. The library also has an extensive collection of Edo period printed works. The Edo period is one of the most important eras in the history of Japan. It was a long era of political stability, urban growth, and cultural development before modern industrialization. Among the items stored here are woodblock printed literature, illustrated travel guides, kabuki theater scripts, medical writings, and old educational texts. One of the most important archives of the NDL is its historical map collections. There are hand-drawn maps here that show ancient agricultural regions, castle towns, trade routes, and urban planning of old Japan. It also has ancient Chinese and Korean texts. These include Confucian writings, dynastic records, and historical chronicles from different periods of East Asian history. Through these documents, do researchers trace how Japan transformed from a feudal shogunate into an industrial and technological superpower? The National Diet Library has two main campuses, one in Tokyo and one in Kyoto, but most of the rare and fragile materials are kept in special sections. There are preservation facilities where conservation experts focus on the restoration and protection of old manuscripts. The National Diet Library is not just an archive of Japan. It is a massive memory vault of East Asian history.